This is Garis, Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of Masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 590, entitled The Masculist Fixing of Feminism. Description. When there are millions of masculists and the GECs, that's GECs, that's Gender Equality Committees, had been set up in the parliaments, the masculist politicians in these GECs will do a much better job than the feminists have done over the past 6 decades of their gender political monopoly at creating a FIP society in which both sexes are raised to be FIPs. Societies have to be rearranged in gender political terms so that women have the best of both worlds, that is, careers and motherhood. So the GECs will need to give the feminists what they want. For example, millions of quality creches for working mothers, a motherhood wage when women are at home looking after small children, etc. And men need to have the gender laws men fared. For example, the divorce courts need to be thoroughly reformed. The paternity rejection right and the OPTAB, that's obligatory paternity testing at birth for all births, need to be legislated, etc. It's likely that the FIP Society will be set up better under masculist management than feminist, due to men's genetically higher intelligence and genius levels. The masculists will even fix feminism better than the feminists have, simply due to the fact that the masculists are male. The flyer itself. The Masculist Fixing of Feminism, by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. I have a rather low opinion of blacks and women, and for the same simple reason, that is, both are dumber than men, that is, white men. There are, for example, 1 billion black Africans with an average IQ of only 70. So it's not surprising that no black African has ever won a science Nobel Prize. Women are dumber than men, but by a lot less, that is, by only 4 IQ points on average. But women also have a 10% smaller IQ variance than men, so that over a whole population, women's IQ scores are more bunched up, and men's are more spread out, so that the morons and the genii are males. Since the genii are males, and men are smarter than women on average by 4 IQ points, it's not surprising that the elite males, when looking at women, have only one direction to look, and that is down. Women, particularly feminists, hate men who point out this obvious fact to women, with feminists labelling these men MCPs, male chauvinist pigs. But that only increases the level of disdain coming from the elite males, who don't have much patience with women's lower ability to put themselves in the shoes of the opposite sex, especially in the shoes of elite males. Since I have a Prof. Doctor in front of my name, I think I can safely claim to be a member of that male elite, who has a condescending attitude towards women's abilities. I spend most of my waking hours studying and teaching master's and PhD level pure math and mathematical physics. I'm also a masculist, so combining these 2 facets of my personality, that is, the masculist and the mathematical scientist, I am struck by the lack of progress that the feminists have made in pushing their feminist agenda onto the daily economic and political lifestyles of Western countries. The feminists have had 6 decades to have done this, but have largely failed. For example, where are the quality and abundant creches for working mothers? Where is the motherhood wage that pays mothers of very young children so that they can stay at home raising them when they are very small, and so that the husbands, the fathers, do not have to bear the burden of earning the living for the whole family on their own? Question mark. Why are there so many millions of miserable middle-aged women who have their careers but no man and no kids, who are on antidepressant drugs, about a third of middle-aged women in the West? Question mark. In brackets. It's estimated that by 2030, 45% of middle-aged women in the US will be living alone, manless and childless. 45%, nearly half, in a mere bit under a decade. It's clear to me that feminism has badly fucked up. Pushing careerism alone to women has made women miserable, since they evolved to have kids. So if they don't have any, nearly all women feel they have missed out on life and become miserable and bitter, who often then lash out childishly at men, blaming men for women's incompetent life decisions. For example, screwing around in their 20s, when they should have been having babies in the peak time of their reproductive fertility, and then hit the wall in their 30s and feel their biological clock ticking. So start looking around for some man-slave to parasite on, to pay for her to stay at home in a middle-class house that he pays for. Then divorces him a decade later, once she has her kids and a house, divorce raping him and destroying the lives of one father in 4, a horrific gender crime that women commit routinely against men. This is also fucked up and incompetent. So speaking as a masculist, once there are millions of masculists and masculism has achieved real political power, once the gender laws have been made men fair, the divorce courts reformed, the PARA, that's paternity rejection right, and the OPTAB, that's OPTAB, obligatory paternity testing at birth for all births to combat women's paternity fraud. The GECs, Gender Equality Committees, consisting half of female feminists and half of male masculists, have been set up to deal with the gender issues of both sexes equally. Then, with masculist politicians in power, they will do a much better job of creating a FIP society than the feminists have done so far, simply because these masculist politicians are smarter, having a higher level of genius than women, and will prove themselves to be more competent, better suited to the considerable challenges of creating a FIP society. Why is the creation of a FIP society so important to the masculists and to the smarter, more visionary of the feminists? A FIP society is one in which both sexes, especially girls, are raised by parents and taught by teachers and professors to be FIPs, that's financially independent persons, who do not parasite off the labour and money of a man, thus man-slaving him for decades and committing the greatest of all gender crimes, that is, man-slavery, that the masculists see as being a massive gender crime that is literally 1,000 times worse than was Negro slavery, given the numbers. Masculist theorists like myself are very conscious that the creation of a FIP society will go a long way towards solving most of men's gender issues. For example, the divorce courts will be fundamentally reformed based on a principle of financial independence, where both divorcing parties are assumed to be FIPs, so alimony and forcing men to make child payments to women who get sole custody of the kids with a 90% probability can be thrown out. With the divorce courts utterly reformed, in a FIP society, there will be no need for alimony nor child payments by men, since custody will be joint by default and the mother will be a FIP, so can make her own money. Today's halving of wealth and stuff will be thrown out, since the divorcing woman is assumed to be a FIP, so has no right to fleece a man of his hard-earned wealth and stuff. The GECs will legislate the major pieces of masculist and feminist law that masculists want and that feminists want. The GECs will educate society better, showing women that to be a careerist alone is not the happiest choice for most women. So female lifestyles need to be created that make women happier, that is, to be able to combine career and motherhood so that both are made possible and practical. The Masculists are putting tremendous moral pressure on women to FIP up or rot on the shelf, since masculisted men refuse to have anything to do with fluffy, manslaving, divorce-raping parasites and punish them to death. So the Masculists demand that women be FIPs and get career-competent educations so that women can be FIPs as adults and not expect to parasite off the labour and money of a man. But we live today in an era with a crashing birth rate that in time, do the math, will wipe us out, since the current birth rates are well below the replacement rate of 2.1 children per woman. So governments will have to put moral pressure on their populations to reproduce as a civic duty, a parental duty to society. So being a mother or a father will need to be made practical and enjoyable. So institutions will have to be reorganised so that parenting is made much pleasanter. Governmental and gender theorists, brackets both masculist and feminist, will push for the creation of creches, millions of them, that are well funded with competent and caring staff so that women can get back to work after, say, their second kid is 4 or 5 and off to kindergarten. The idea of women's CMT, that's career mother timeline, needs to be promoted by the GECs. For example, an upper middle class woman gets her master's degree at 23 in a career competent field, in brackets, unlike 80% of women today who choose to study fluffy crap majors that will make them fluffies as adults, in brackets, fluffy equals traditional woman who expects to live off the money and labour of a man, manslaving him for years, end quote. Fluffies are vermin to masculists who effectively exterminate them by totally ignoring them, not even pumping and dumping them, forcing them to die a slow, miserable death, rotting on the shelf. She has her first kid at 29 and her second at 31. When her second kid is off to kindergarten, she's 35, when she goes back to her career and does not manslave a man. With the CMT, women get to be both mothers and careerists, and men get to throw off their traditional man-slavery role to women, thus liberating men greatly. The GECs need to create a motherhood wage when the kids are very small and the mother is staying at home to raise them. The father will thus not bear sole financial responsibility for the costs of the family, thus lowering his stress level considerably. The GECs will educate women to be bi-conscious, that is, teaching everyone that gender oppression as it exists today is very much a two-way street. Today's feminism is a deeply misandrist, gynocentric ideology that preaches to women that gender oppression is a one-way street, that women are the oppressed and that men are the oppressors, that makes women, that is, feminists, hate men. By teaching both sexes that gender oppression is a two-way street, and that in fact women oppress men worse with their many decades-lasting gender crimes against men, for example, manslavery, divorce, rape, forced fathering, etc., then monoconscious feminazis will die out. Relations between the sexes will get a lot better, since both sexes will see how each sex oppresses the other sex. The masculist genii will redesign and restructure society so that it is a FIP society, where the gender laws have been men-fared, and the feminists are given what they want, that is, so women can have the best of both worlds, of career and motherhood, which must happen if we are not to wipe ourselves out due to the crash in the birth rate. Once men move heavily into gender politics, they will do a better job of it than women, simply because they are men, with their greater intelligence and higher levels of genius than women. Whenever men put their minds to something, they always dominate it. Women can't compete with men at the top end of the performance scale. When men start flexing their intellectual and political muscles in the GECs, we will see men do a far better job of gender liberating society, in brackets, in both feminist and masculist perspectives, than women. Personally, When I look at what millions of feminists have done over the past 6 decades of their gender political monopoly, I sneer. They have achieved so little. Once we men, we masculisted men, turn our minds to gender politics, we will clean up today's mess, gender politically speaking. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Author of the book Masculism, Men's Rebellion Against Being Man-Slaves to Women, an e-textbook of 590 plus masculist flyers for men's studies courses, freely downloadable in Microsoft Word format from my website. Ciao.